What's up, everyone? Welcome to ClearTalk. This video, we're going to talk about what Trump's administration means for education. All right, so look, we're going to check this one here. Consider subscribing, comment, share, all the good. Check out my other channels, like, subscribe, and all that good stuff there as well. You got the Discord there. Top. Patreon. $3 a month there. Anything you do for support is much appreciated. Thank you. Topic at hand. Education. We've already, we've heard on the campaign trail, about dismantling the Department of Education, and all this stuff with critical race theory, transgender stuff in schools, and all this kind of stuff. So we have an article here. Check out from Time what Trump's win means for education. So Donald Trump will be serving a second presidential term with both chambers of Congress likely under Republican leadership. The House is still undecided. The future of education in the U.S. could starkly change. Trump has pledged to dismantle the Department of Education, cut federal funding for schools teaching critical race theory, and bar transgender female athletes from participating in school sports. American people re-elect Trump by a resounding margin, giving him a mandate to implement the promises he made in the campaign trail. It wasn't really resounding. That's something that's annoyed me. He barely won. He will deliver. Trump's transition team did not respond. Whatever, it doesn't matter. On the campaign trail, the presidential-elect vowed to eliminate the Department of Education, which has been a cabinet-level agency since 1980. The department takes in numerous functions, designating federal aid through the Title I, which gives state and local funding for schools serving low-income families, handing out Pell Grants, and regulating student loan relief through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program or income-based repayment plans. Experts tell Time that dismantling the Department of Education is likely improbable. It is entirely feasible to close down the Department of Education, but the functions of the Department of Education will need to continue. Which is interesting. It's like, yeah, you can close down the Department of Education, but what Department of Education does will still need to be allocated somewhere. So if you wanted to eliminate just like from a financial state, like just cutting out employees, you could eliminate the department itself, but what department actually does pretty much needs to continue. That's because the Education Department has numerous moving parts. It houses the Office of Civil Rights, which enforces federal civil rights laws across schools to protect students against discrimination. Regulations by the Educational Department also affect college sports, which Josh Cohen, an educational policy Michigan State University professor and author of whatever, blah, 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 would likely not want to see impacted. I don't know what that has to do with anything. I guess because he made a statement. Grants or funds designated by Congress will also need a new federal home. They're going to have to also take the federal programs and the funding streams that they want to continue to reauthorize and find new institutional homes for that. So, he's basically saying that, like I said, you can dismantle the Department of Education, but these things that the Department of Education does, it's just going to have to be reallocated somewhere because they need to continue. You can't just stop these things. we're talking about helping serve low income families and stuff like that. I mean, you're talking about uh, a lot of these areas and stuff with low income families. Even here in Mississippi, the in the county that I live in, my kids, they go to the county schools. They uh, and Mississippi has a, crazy enough, as weird as it is, they actually do, since COVID, they have had a low income family, like well, they always had low income family, like helping with kids, giving them meals or whatever, helping pay for the meals, um, for low income families, and this is across a lot of the United States. Helping those kids have, whether it's reduced meals or even in some cases free meals, uh, making sure that all kids are fed at school, right? Uh, but even like here, we have, since COVID, pretty much, we have been, um, everybody's been fed. Like our county school, um, it has such a certain percentage of low income families that go there, that uh, based in the rules that our government has set, our local government has set for that, our whole school um, uh, applies for free school, for free meals and stuff. So our kids get to go, to school and eat breakfast, lunch for free, and it's just something that has continued since COVID, and it just helps because, like I said, a certain percentage of the school, that reaches a certain, percentage ceiling, that of low income families, that we uh, benefit from that. These kind of things this, I'm sure, is something that would be kind of dealing with that. Granted, that is kind of a local thing, but you also, they get federal funding from that too. That helps in that. Um, but this is strictly even for low income families, which is something that even my kids previously had. They had the reduced meals, meeting a certain ceiling for that. This is all across the country, and even talking about Pell Grants and stuff. How many students get Pell Grants to help them get into colleges and stuff like that? I mean, we're talking, student loan relief and things like that. Like, this is uh, stuff that's been in place. Stuff that they, I mean, you can't just get rid of these things. Um, or you're basically saying, f you to students and kids all across America. You know, uh, sorry, if you can't afford to eat, that's too bad. Or sorry if you can't afford to go to college, because we can't, give you these. I mean, you just, that really what the Republican Party wants to say? I'm inclined to think yes, but anyway, let's move on. Um, Reducing funds for DEI and critical race theory. On his campaign trail, Trump promised to cut federal funding for any school or program pushing critical race theory or gender ideology on our children. Critical race theory refers to academic frameworks that teach systematic racism is embedded in American society, which it is. Trump has also spoken out against diversity, equity, and inclusion measures at colleges and universities across the country, or also known as DEI. Campaigning against DEI has proven popular across Republican strongholds because they have no idea what the hell it is. Has already some 10 states have passed restrictions on DEI that have shut down offices at public universities, including Kentucky and North Carolina. It's absolutely accurate and fair to say that the Trump administration will be looking to penalize any institution, whether K through 12 or higher education, for administrating DEI programs. How much money they can remove, how hard they can make life Bureaucratically, those are still slightly even open questions, but they're obviously trying going to try that. I can't speak. Amy Floyd, CEO of nonprofit All for Ed, says the Trump administration could target funding for such programs through avenues as the Higher Education Act or Congress. The Trump administration could work with Congress on the reauthorization of any of the foundational funding streams for education. Uh, and of course, erosion of rights for LGBT students. Experts predict the rights of LGBTQ plus students would suffer under Trump administration due to changes that would likely be made in Title IX, which prohibits sex-based discrimination in education. The Biden administration attempts to expand protections under the Title IX to include LGBTQ plus community and particularly transgender students in April, but the expansion was faced legal challenges from Republican-led states blocking the protections from being implemented across 26 states. Trump would not need congressional authority to make changes on the Title IX's guidance. Trump has also said on numerous occasions that he would ban transgender female athletes, who he refers to as men, from participating in sports that match with their gender identity. We will, of course, keep men out of women's sports, he said in November 2nd in Virginia. Now, I know that particularly is a major issue across the country, or at least it's being made a major issue. Um, to some degree, I can understand it. And to some other degree, I feel like it's not as big of a deal as it's being made out to be. Um, uh, I would argue that particular sports might be a concern. I think it maybe could be like on a sport by sport basis. But this is that the transgender conversation needs to be more more thought out, more uh, things considered in that. To have a more like nuanced discussion about what's genuinely concerning and what's just sort of like unnecessarily, making a mountain out of a molehill kind of thing. But I mean, like I said, but the biggest issue is the discrimination in school, sex based discrimination. Where you're removing protections for any of this community to be discriminated against for whatever reason. I mean, this is what we're talking about. The impact of sexual assault victims on campus. During Trump's first administration, Educational Secretary Betsy DeVos announced regulations that would better protect people being accused of campus sexual harassment and assault under Title IX. Biden reversed parts of that guidance, in particular the Trump era definition of sexual harassment, which critics argued made victims less likely to report crimes this spring, but some experts, like Mitchell, predict that sexual assault victims could become vulnerable yet again under Trump. So this is like some type of protection for people being accused of sexual harassment and assault. So let's protect, like it says here, some critics argued that the victims are less likely to report crimes. This may have something to do with like the boyfriend, like clause and stuff like that, or what was it? Was it the boyfriend clause or whatever it was called? Where you couldn't, gave them protections or whatever from accusations against whatever. I don't know. I can't remember the exact details about it. But that's a major concern. Um, and then expanding parental rights. Uh, I understand that would change regarding education under the Trump administration. Experts say people can also glean what is important or happening in Republican states with the parental rights movement. The push that has been behind book bans, which are forecasted to have nearly tripled from the previous school year, and don't say gay laws in states such as Florida and Texas. Trump vowed to adopt a presidential parental bill of rights and implement the first election of student principals by the parents on his campaign website. Direct election of school principals by the parents. Hmm. While Trump has distanced himself from Project 25, the policy agenda outlines plans to use federal education funding for private schools. School regulatories have been unsuccessful in passing bills that would do so. 3 states had this exact thing on the ballot on Tuesdays, and voters rejected them in all 3 states, including 2 states, Nebraska and Kentucky, that went for Donald Trump. The other one was in Colorado. So this is something that is, wasn't defined in Project 2025 about using federal education funding for private schools. Uh, Hell no. They already get enough money. I don't even know why this is even an issue outside of them wanting to make private schools cheaper or maybe help uh, incentivize them to be cheaper because they would be getting federal educational funding, which then lessens the federal educational funding for your actual public schools. So therefore, you're hurting public schools to help private schools that are already getting funding from the people who go there. They're really trying to dismantle public schooling. That's what they're trying to do. That measure. That's the intent. To dismantle public schools for privatization. Censorship and free speech. Debates around free speech earned momentum across college campuses amid the pro-Palestinian encampments and protests earlier this year in the U.S. Trump has previously called himself the president of law and order, vowed to restore free speech, end censorship, and bar federal funding for nonprofit and academic programs that engage in censorship. But in 2020, Trump threatened to use federal force to end protesters following the murder of George Floyd. Yeah, by like shooting them in the knees or the kneecaps or legs or whatever he said. They mean by federal force meaning the U.S. military. He praised police crackdowns on student protesters and told wealthy donors that he would remove student demonstrators from if elected. That's something that he's been talking about, which he's calling in which he uses Palestinian as like a slur when he says Palestinian, as if they're like bad people. So this is what we're looking for education. Censorship and free speech. Silencing those who want to protest. Giving expanding parental rights. Whether it's trying to change funding to private schools or giving parents the right to elect school principals. I don't know how much of an issue that really is. I could see where it could be a problem. Uh, the whole book banning thing is a big problem. Sexual assault victims, guidance. We're going to apparently protect people who are being accused instead of the ones who are being harassed. Uh, our LGBTQ students, sorry, but your your rights are going to be affected. DEI and critical race theory out the door. But most of all, the Department of Education being dismantled. This is a big concern for assistance and everything else for students, whether it's K through 12 for students going into colleges. Um, the concerns about, you know, what extent they are really wanting to so-called dismantle the Department of Education. Or if it's more of a, you know, kind of a rebranding or whatever, restructuring. But like I said, you could close the Department of Education, you know, as far as the actual department itself, the people who work there. You know, if you want to eliminate overhead or whatever, but the actual functions need to continue and they need to remain. They need to be held, you know, and funded. So that's the question, as to just to what extent this man and his administration, the people that he puts in place, are going to F up our school systems and our educational programming in this country. For me, there needs to be more funding into schooling. I would rather take half of the military spending and put it into schooling, and put it into education, put it into healthcare, put it into, you know, I mean, there's so many other places that things like that could be done. Money, you know, but what do they want to do? They want to dismantle stuff. They want to take away assistance programs and to help students. You know, there's laws or stuff being put up in several states trying to ban or prevent students from getting fed in schools. There's articles being put up in Congress. Has been put up in Congress trying to ban even blue states from doing it, because you've had several blue states that have put in, like, you know, laws and stuff to secure students being fed, you know, in schools. Like Walls did in Minnesota, where they paid for all schools to have free lunch and breakfast for all students. Period. I mean, that seems like the logical thing. That seems like the moral thing. Make sure our kids are fed in school. You know, it takes everything. It takes all the stress off of the student, off the parents, and everything else when you do that. I mean, like even here locally, they've already, you know, for years now, they, you know, when I was growing up, you had your, you know, your lockers and stuff in the hallways where you could put your stuff in. That way you only had to worry about taking certain books and stuff in between classes or whatnot. You know, what you didn't need, you could leave at the school, only bring home what you needed as far as homework and stuff. They have to tote around everything for every fucking class, every day, everywhere now. They have no lockers. My kids have to literally tote around their book bags full with all their stuff all day long. That's already stress enough. Physical problems and stuff like that. I mean, my son talks about his back hurting all the time. I mean, this is this is what we've come to in our education, in our schools and stuff. And then on top of that, having to worry about, trying to make sure that he's got food, like if he's going to take his lunch or something, or, has the money to pay for school lunch or something like this is unnecessary. When if they just have, everything funded and they don't have to worry about that, they can just go to school, they can eat. I wish they would get, lockers and everything back in the schools. But they did that to try to prevent, weapons, drugs, or whatever else, could be hiding up in the lockers. You know how we used to have little drug searches or whatever every so often. Okay, what was the big deal there? If you're that concerned with it, if you've got some, people reporting it or something, let a drug dog go through what I'm checking. But now you've done caused, and students haven't. I mean, it hasn't prevented that shit from happening. They just bring it in their book bags. Even though now you've got to have clear book bags or have to have mesh book bags that you can see through. But it's not like you can't still hide. I mean, they've got so much shit in those bags. It's not like you can't still hide something in it. I mean, it's not that hard. If a student really wanted to bring something into school, they could still bring it into school, whether it was a knife or a gun or whatever the case. I mean, it's just stupid that the solutions that they've come up with aren't solutions. They're not doing anything but ultimately hurting the students. And this kind of shit is just going to continue to hurt even more. For especially, particularly just lower income students. So, I mean, this is. I've had issues with our educational system for years now, and it's just continuously getting worse. Nobody's really helping it. The Democrats aren't helping it. Republicans certainly don't want to help it. They want to completely dismantle it. The Democrats do enough just to keep it going. As far as like our federal, now there's a lot of state ones that are actually doing some real substantive things, but I mean, it's nonsense. We need some major educational reform, but it needs to be in progression of our educational system and helping improve things fundamentally for everybody. More funding, better access to stuff, to paying our teachers more, incentivizing better educational opportunities, or all these things. Like there's college, free access to, community college, things like that, to help educational opportunities for our educational capacity to grow on a more, bringing the whole system up, not just that can either financially improve themselves or just on a, skill, mental, cognitive, level that they can just breeze through stuff, with ease. Not everybody learns the same way though. Not everybody is, has super IQs or anything like that, or has, some sort of whatever mental acuity to retain ridiculous amount of information or whatever, and become some sort of prodigy or whatever. Not everybody's a prodigy, but if you could lift the whole system, bring the floor up. That's what I'm talking about. That's kind of change that we need. Not dismantling shit. Anyways. We're in for a hell of a 4 years. And it's going to be hard to put things back together after. Thank you for joining me. The next time, peace. ClearTalk.